Hey guys,
You got it.
Liz is not with us today, so I'm the hey guys guy.
The Hey Guys guy.
The hey guys guy. But,
Well, who'd you bring along with you, Denny?
He brought me, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
This is the world famous Jim Linnell.
Famous man.
We're all proud to have him here.
Oh, yeah. We've been having a good time already this week. I think we've got 4 videos down already.
4? Yeah.
Yeah, we did 2 on Monday, 2 yesterday. We're going to give you a break today. You're just going to have to do a live video. So
That's all right. Yeah.
we recorded the other ones. Unless you were on Twitch, you got a glimpse into a few other lives.
Yeah.
But we were talking, when we were talking, maybe Monday what we were going to do for this live, and I was like, there's been a few questions every now and then about feathers. And you're like, well, I've done a feather or two. And I was like, well, let's see what you can do then.
Yeah,
So,
done a feather or two.
here we are. We're going to be doing some of that. So why don't you, I guess, Denny introduced you.
Yeah, I'm Jim. So I do
That's
leather
about
work. It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Jim, and I have a problem. I'm a leather worker.
You have a problem, yes.
And I've had that problem for, let's see, this year makes 55 years since
Cool.
I first got a beginner set of tools. So it's been, it hasn't been painful, though. It's actually what I love to do. I retired 5 years ago, so I can do what I love to do.
You retired from Tandy.
I worked,
correct?
yeah, I put almost 40 years with them. So I was able to make a living doing what I love to do. And, in fact, one of the reasons I do a lot of teaching today is because, I was the face of Tandy out at all these leather shows and such like that. And it wasn't uncommon to have somebody come up and say, man, you got the best job in the world. I mean, you get to travel all over the place. You get to do leather work and you make a living at it. And, they were right. I did have the best job in the world. I loved getting up and going to work every day. And I now that I'm retired, I kind of feel obligated to pass on what I know. I mean, I am the guy that got to do what I love to do. And there's so many people that get up and, oh yeah, I got to go to work.
Right.
I never had that. And, but now if I were to just like turn into a hermit or something like that and take all of this knowledge and experience that I have in the world of leatherworking and just kind of hide in my shop, I think the world would be able to say, shame on you, Jim Linnell. Shame on you. I mean, you got to do what everybody else dreams of doing. Every other leatherworker would love to be able to do what you did, and you're not going to pass that on?
Yeah.
Shame on you. So, anyway.
Well, now you get to show everything.
So now I get to share.
All you guys have to do is tune in.
Yeah, that's all right. So anyway, yes, we talked about can we do feathers? And yes, I can do feathers. In fact, there's a lot of feathers that are done out there. And a lot of those folks that are teaching people how to do feathers probably learned how to do it from me. So I'll show you how I do them. And y'all are welcome to do them that way or not. And there's several ways you can do it. I've got a piece of leatherwork here where I've got a feather that's just carved on there and the edges are lifted up, and I'll show you how that's done. That's pretty easy. But I do these 3-dimensional ones. In fact, I've been practicing here just a little bit this morning, and here's what we're going to make. I'm going to show you how to do this, a true live 3-dimensional feather like this.
I've got a question. What do you do with a feather like that?
Well, let's see if you could put a barrette on the back of it. I guess that'd make a heck of a hair barrette.
Oh,
if they don't all have to be this size either. I've taken some. I wish I'd have brought some. You can take and shrink this down to about like that and get some earring finding and make some of the coolest stinking earrings you ever saw. And they're really popular. I tell you a story about that. In fact, I'm going to make one of those. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to work while we talk. I was up. I had a chance to teach some classes up in Anchorage, Alaska. And I was with the 4-H up there, and of course I had a table with all my samples out there. But there's a limit to what you can carry in your luggage going to Alaska. Sure. So I took some of these earrings with me up there, and they're a little scrap of leather like this. I could get a pair of earrings out of that, So there's like nothing in them, but you paint them up. They look really cool. And I had these laying out on the table along some other things, and I had this lady come up. She says, "Oh my God, those are awesome! How much are they?" And I said, "What? They're not for sale. I'm just here showing you what you can make with leather." And she said, and she was just insistent and making a scene almost out of it. And some other ladies showed up there as well. And so she said, well, if you were going to sell those, how much would they go for? And I said, I don't know, what, $25 or something like that. They're not that much. And she grabbed, I had like 4 pairs, and she grabbed them all like that. She said, I'll take them. And I thought I was going to have a fight right there, because these other gals that were there said, she can't do that. So they anyway. So I told them, I said, all right. I said, I'll let you buy them, but you're going to have to wait till the show's over, because that's my samples.
You kind of need those.
But they are that appealing, and they are that cool. So, and what I'm going to show here is basically how that's done. And again, I'm going to make this one large enough so you can see it. But so a feather pattern, I didn't bring a tracing pattern, but there's not much to it. They're pretty simple to sketch on here. They need to have a little bit of a bow to them, and you can see that it's...
What weight of leather are you using there?
This here it's about 2 ounce maybe. It's pretty lightweight, which is perfect for this, because we want to deceive people into thinking that it really is
a real feather.
A real feather, right? So we want it to look really thin. In fact, I'm going to skive it down some from here. So starting out, you can see my pattern. Hopefully that shows up on the camera, whatever you're looking at there. I just sketched a rough outline, and you can see how rough that is, but I'm going to use that as a guide then to get it cut in here. So we got to have a quill running up the middle of it, right? So got to have your swivel knife all tuned up so you can make it go where you want it to go. And then we're just going to cut the outline of it here. Now, I know that sample I showed you had the edges all kind of twisted up and stuff like that, but that's not how I start out with it. I start out with it just getting that general shape on the leather.
Everybody has to reserve judgment, correct?
No, you're welcome to judge all you want.
Judge all you want.
Yeah, I judge all the time. I was telling folks in one of those videos I did earlier that I get to do a lot of judging. I get to do the leather debut and all that up in Sheridan. So, man, I'm the most judgmental person there is. But not really. We all start at the same place. I started out with 6 basic stamping tools. They were what came in a beginner's kit. I was age 11 when I got those, and that's all I had. And that's really, I found out that in a swivel knife, that's really all you need too. I did a lot of leather work with that for many years before I ever was able to afford to buy more stuff, and it it still is all you really got to have. So anyway, let me get back to what I'm doing here. I'll tell you all the stories about me you want.
Well, you pulled out a tool, and I knew the question was going to come.
What is this?
Not that one.
Not that one.
The Old Faithful.
Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was calling this Old Faithful in the videos because, well, this is the one that, and I don't know if you've panned all this stuff that's laying out here, but all this leather work that's out here that I've done anyway was all done with this swivel knife. Big stuff, small stuff, floral stuff, figure carving, embossing, all of it is done with this one here. I don't have a different swivel knife for every kind of work that I do. I use this one for everything, which is one of the things I sometimes judge people on. I've had people actually blame their knife before as to why they can't do it. And you know what? That ain't going to work with me.
Even if you drop it, it's not the knife's fault.
Yeah, right. Well,
but Jim, you have a ceramic blade in it.
If this one here, you drop it, you got a problem. But you know what? It isn't the knife. I mean, I've got another one here that's just plain old metal blade in it, and it would do all of the same stuff. You know, what I can do with that swivel knife, what a swivel knife will do, has a lot more to do with the hand that's running it than it does with the knife.
Sure.
You ought to see some of the swivel knives that some of these old saddle makers used to use. Holy smokes, they were crude. They were nowhere near as fancy or as pretty as what we use today. But you know what? The work they did was outstanding. And But yeah, mine that I use at Old Faithful here is a 1/4 inch wide straight blade. It's a ceramic blade, but there's nothing magical about ceramic. Ceramic is actually more fragile. You got to be careful. If you did drop it on your marble, it's pretty well done. But it's one I've had for a long time, and what I like about it is the thickness of it. It's a thicker blade than what most blades are today.
You like a thick blade?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because how fine a cut I make has more to do with the pressure I put on the blade than it does how thick the blade is. There's a lot of people think to do this really fine stuff, something really intricate like that, I got to have a really tiny, intricate blade to be able to do that. That's hogwash. You got to learn how to use what you got. And that they really doesn't matter about the knife. It matters about how much you've practiced with it more than anything else.
How familiar you get yourself with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So anyway, I'm going back to this. I'm gonna bevel the quill that runs up the middle of this feather, and I'm going to use. I got a pair of bevelers here. In fact, mine are old enough they don't even have numbers on them. But if you were to go out there shopping for these, they have diagonal lines on them. They're a B202L and a B202R, and they have diagonal lines. And what they do is they start to give me the texture coming off of this quill that I want to have. So, when I bevel this quill, in the world of the Sheridan style carving, they have something called a leaf liner. And it works kind of like this, except I can't run those for spit. They don't lock for me. I have to make one impression and then move it. But this here I can use like a regular beveler, and it works pretty good. So, and you'll notice I snuck a piece of cardboard underneath that.
Why do you do that?
Why did I do that? I knew that question was coming. I do that because this cardboard, it isn't just cardboard. It's actually somebody ripped it off the back of their tablet for me. And the reason for that is this cardboard underneath there will absorb some of the forces. This is pretty thin leather, and I'm whacking it pretty deep. And if you look, you can. I can feel it. But I've got a groove running up there where I'm actually stamping this deeper than my leather is. And if I were doing that straight on the granite here, I'd probably be going all the way through it.
You'd be able to see daylight from the back.
And one of the things I explained this, and I'll show you an example, but I explained this in one of the videos we did earlier this week that, when I'm working with lightweight leather, there's two reasons we will usually back them to keep them from, one is to keep from stretching out of shape. But I actually glue cardboard on the back of my, or not cardboard, actually mat board on the back of my leather so that I can get additional depth out of it as well. And here's the example I want to show folks. Here's a piece of leather carving. This is some Arizona style, Porter style leather carving here. And this was done on some about, 3-4 ounce leather. And I stamped it pretty good. And if I had this piece of cardboard underneath it, and again, I'll try to tip that up so that maybe the camera catches how much that design is actually imprinted into that piece of cardboard.
Yes.
All right. Well, what does that do? Yeah, and you're here. You can testify. If you run your hand on the back,
it's like embossed on the back side.
That's right. It's pressed deeper than that leather is thick. Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to do here with my my feather. I want that quill to stand out a little bit more. And by using the cardboard underneath, I can get it to pop out just a little bit more. So,
now, if you were using a heavier piece of leather, it probably wouldn't do the same thing for you.
Well, you'd be surprised. I back stuff even up to 6-7 ounce. I can actually tool 6-7 ounce deep enough to get that same kind of an imprint in it. So yeah, it still works, but. Again, there's two reasons for putting some kind of backing on. A lot of people use like this painter's tape, to back their leather, which is fine. I know people that will take and rubber cement it down to some x-ray film. That was another one of those popular things people do. But the problem is when you hit bottom, you're bottomed out. There's no place, nothing to absorb the imprint that you're putting into the leather. So if you're not careful, you can still go through it. And so it's just a way that you can get additional depth out of it. You were looking at my business card case here. Tell people how thick that leather is on there. It's stuck on it. That
is probably 1 to 2 ounce at the heaviest.
Yeah, it's lighter than what I'm working on here. And and you can, if you run your fingers over it, they can't probably tell, but it's got some pretty good depth in it. I actually did that.
You can see the edge right there.
Yeah, and I lifted it and undercut it and such, and that was the reason I could do that is because of the fact it was glued down to a piece of cardboard or a piece of mat board. It's actually not cardboard. If you're going to do that, you need a piece of cardboard that's not corrugated. It needs to be, like I've used, what do they call it?
Poster board?
Yeah, well, no, it's got to be a little heavier than that. It's the, golly, that's what happens when you get old. You go brain dead sometimes. But what I'm using here, this is mat board. This is stuff a framer would put around the edge of a picture frame, which is just a thicker cardboard. And so, anyway, yeah, I got my quilt popping out. And you know what? You can see on the back here, in fact, you can feel on the back that it's already pressed down pretty good. Yeah. So, all right, but now
you've got those lines started.
Got those lines already starting at the diagonal I need, and so I'm going to go back to the other Old Faithful. This is not really. Actually, this is a hair blade, and I've had this hair blade probably as long as I've had that knife as well. A hair blade. A lot of people. I'll whip this out. And one of the first questions people ask is, "How do you sharpen those things?" Well, I don't know because I've never had to sharpen one. A hair blade is not really a blade. It's a texturing tool. Right. It's for putting fine lines on a piece of leather. And if you go watch one of the videos that I did earlier this week, you find that I actually use this in some of my floral carving as well. I actually will run this over the stems and such of some of my leather carving. I don't know if I got an example here. I didn't do it on that one. But anyway, I do that quite often to...
just add a little texture to
well,
the stem.
It does, and then when you do a resist technique, then it grabs a little bit of color too, and so you get a little more contrast and a little more color in your leather. So
there's that piece we did,
and I used it on there. Yeah, you can see it.
Yes.
How I run that. Mm-hmm. The other reason I use it on floral stuff like this is that actually then I lean it over the edge and it rounds off those square corners I have on my floral stuff. So.
And a lot of people would use a back beveler for that, but that will be doing about the same thing as a back beveler, correct?
Yeah, except I don't use back bevelers.
Right where my thumb is.
Yeah, I don't use back bevelers either because I don't think you need to. And I'll explain that, though. I have an opinion about everything. You'll find that out. I never knew they had such things, and I've had people come up and look at my stuff and say, how do you get that nice soft edge on there? Well, when I'm working on heavier leather and I want to have softer edges on it, you know what I learned? I learned that if you cut just a little bit lighter and bevel a little bit deeper, that beveling pulls that edge over and you get just a nice natural roundness.
It kind of sucks that.
Yeah, it pulls the corner of that. It pulls the corner of that over. You still get the same depth, but you have the softened corners on it, and that's what I always did. And then somebody said, "Do you use back bevelers to do that?" And I had to say, "Well, what's a back beveler?"
Well, do you despise people who use a back beveler?
No, I don't.
Because I do.
I don't despise anybody, and that's the other thing that when folks watch those videos, or I'll just say it here, I don't care what you use. You know, when you get all done with anything that you've invested your time into, nobody's going to look at your stuff and say, "Golly, I wonder if you used a back beveler," or they're not trying to second guess what tools you used. They're going to look at the quality of the work you did. And if what you are using produces the results you want, you're using the right stuff. That's the bottom line. Some people get way too caught up on I got to have this tool or I got to have that tool because somebody out on the internet, on Facebook, said that you can't do leather right if you don't use this. And you know what? Quit listening to them. Quit listening to them. Learn how to do leather work. One of the things I tell people about this all the time, that a lot of the tools and everything that we use today are really evolved from what early leatherworkers created. You know what? When they got into a bind and wanted to do something on a piece of leather that they didn't have a tool that did, you know what they didn't run over to Springfield Leather and get one.
They take a hitch pin out of an old wagon tongue or something.
Well, yeah, whatever they had, they figured out how do I create what I got in my head I want to create, and then they either modified the tool that they have or they improvised with what they had, or they created a whole new tool. And you know what? Some of those tools are the very same ones that we're using today. Those modifications, that's where that came from. And you know what? I think one of the things that I think, we have today available to us the best leather, the best tools, the best everything that this craft has ever had available to it. If there's anybody out there complaining that they can't do it because they don't have the right stuff, well, you just need to find something else to do, because we've never had it as good as we have it today. But, there's something that's lost, I think, a little bit in creativity when you can just go get whatever you need. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and when you want to do something and you don't have what you need to do it, you get creative. It spurs a creativity to do that. And, the fact that we don't have to do that, we can just, go on the internet and get on Amazon or whatever, and get it, have it tomorrow if we want, and that's, we don't have to be all that creative to do that,
Right.
So I think there's something lost when we don't have to do that. That's the difference between, my goal is to make people into craftsmen. A craftsman is somebody that looks at what they got and they figure out how to make it do what they want to do. And I think we need more people that approach it like that. So.
The wetsuit boy had a question.
I'm getting to him, Holly.
Go ahead. You'll have to interject because I'll keep talking if you don't.
No, that's fine. We had a whole bunch. I know you mentioned the post, Jim. You saw it on there. So there's some questions that we have come down. Some of them we've kind of knocked out. What's your favorite Sheridan style tooling? Use a tool that you have available, and don't hold yourself to a specific tool. If you could have 5 stamps, what would they be?
If I had 5 stamps,
you would ask for one more.
Yeah, I'd ask for one more. Leatherwork, I can carve anything I want to carve with the 6 basic tools that came with my beginner set. You need a pear shader, a beveler, a seeder, a veiner, camouflage tool, and a background tool. Those are the 6 basic stamps. That and a swivel knife will let you carve anything you want. And literally, I could carve just about everything that's on this table with those 6 tools. Or at least versions of those 6 tools. Okay, so then as people grow their tool collections, then you get different sizes of bevelers, you get different sizes of shaders, you get different sizes of that, so that you can do smaller or bigger or more versatile type of work. But those are still the most important tools that anybody will ever need if you want to do carving. If you are a stamper, well, if you're somebody that just wants a stamp that does everything for you, you just whack it like a basket weave or something like that, that doesn't take a lot of creativity. I'm not a basket weave stamper, by the way. I can, and I do, but
I don't feel about a bar grinder, Jim.
It doesn't take a lot of creativity to use some of those tools. I mocked bar grinders because it's not my favorite tool for a background tool. But the reason for that isn't because of what it does on the leather. The reason for that is that I think it's a very tough tool for a beginner to learn. I think a beginner needs to start out, and that's who I tend to teach to mostly, people that just don't even know where to begin. I think you need a tool that you'll get some success with. And I know way too many people that have thrown bar grounders across the room. They take a precision that a beginner just isn't quite ready to use. So
you think they work better after you throw them across the room?
Well, mine did, because I couldn't find it for a while. So,
do you have a favorite style of carving?
It's style. You said that now. What? Favorite. Golly,
okay. Do you have a favorite type of carving? That may be easier.
Yeah. No. I love all of it. No question about that. And again, you can look at the samples I brought with, and you can see that I do all of the above. I do the embossing. I love to do figure carving. I think probably the kind of carving I enjoyed the most, if I were to think hard about it, is probably doing pictorial stuff, trees, scenery, and that kind of stuff. And primarily it's I find that just easy to do for me. And the reason I don't do more classes on that is because it's hard to find some of those tools today. or you without doing some modification. While you were all asking those questions, I want you to tell you what I just did here and why I did what I just did. I just cut out that feather. You saw the whole process up to that. I got the diagonal lines on there. I took my hair blade and I put it across there. One of the things about using the hair blade is what you don't want to do is try to match up when you're running it on here. You don't want to try to match up each row here so they run side by side, because if you do, it looks like somebody plowed a field. You're going to see these furrows running up there. Yep. You want to overlap each one of these passes that you make, and they're not running off of here at a 90-degree angle. That beveler tool that I used started with a nice upward slope on it. That's why I used that particular beveler. And so I just take that same angle and I follow that all the way out to the edge. In fact, that's why I cut it out after I've done that, because I ran that all the way past the edge when I was doing it. So I've got that texture all the way to the very edge of this piece of leather. And then I cut it out. And I should make sure again that you noticed what I was doing, because I was doing more talking than explaining. When I was cutting this out, I was using a scalpel, and I was using this thing at a very flat angle.
Almost like a fillet knife.
Almost like a fillet knife. You can see how much I shaved that. And why would I do that? Well, I want people, when they pick this up and they look at the edge of that, I want it to look like a feather edge. And so it does have that, but that's still not good enough. So here we go. Safety beveler. This is another one of those tools people have thrown across the room. They're not always the most agreeable tool to use, and that's usually because people don't use them correctly. A lot of people use it like a potato peeler. They'll pull straight like that, and they do all their cutting right here in the middle of this blade at the lowest bow, and because of that, it gets dull, and so they keep changing out blades all the time. But you know what? If you'll treat it like a knife, if you'll angle it so that leather slices across that blade. It slices like that. It works like it's supposed to, and it works really well, and you don't even have to fight it. It comes off nice and clean like that. Anyway, no extra charge for that.
If you could grab one tool, what would be your favorite one?
It's a swivel knife, of course.
Old Faithful.
Well, a swivel knife is the beginning of every design you'll ever carve in a piece of leather, so you definitely got to have a swivel knife. And yes, I've done complete designs with just a swivel knife. That one thing I had here, I hate bare leather, and so when I did this little notebook here, the back didn't have anything on it, so you got to do something on there, right? So just use your swivel knife and create a design. That's real simple to do. In fact, Friday we do a trading card thing.
Yep.
Stay tuned. If y'all come on back, because you'll see me do some stuff with a swivel knife. I might even show off. So yeah, a swivel knife's the most critical tool. I was telling earlier. I tell some stories more than once, but earlier there's a fella that used to be. He was one of the last stampers, leather carvers for S.D. Myers. His name is Billy Wooters. He lived out in Albuquerque, New Mexico when I met him, but S.D. Myers was in El Paso. They were the company that they used to have a contract for all of the gun leather for the Texas Rangers, and in fact they made General Patton's gear that he took to World War II. So anyway, great place, and he was one of the last stampers there. And you know what? Like some leather workers, not to mention anybody here sitting here, but some of them are cantankerous sometimes and have opinions that are quite strong, and they express them loudly. Anyway, when I met him, the first thing he did when he came in and looked at some of my stuff is he picked it up and he looked it over and he says, "Yeah, he knows how to run a knife," and that was it. It was all about, do you know how to run a swivel knife or not? That was my qualification. We became good friends after that, And he's no longer with us, but he was a great guy. What did I just do here too? Y'all are getting me distracted. They're following along. Okay, all right. Well, I got it thinned down. You see how much leather I took off the back of this? This is thin leather to begin with, and then I just shaved that much more leather off the edges of that. So when you look at the edge of that, Man, it is really, really fine. And if you got some fuzzy stuff like this sticking out there, well, we can't have fuzzy stuff on our edges, so take and trim that off if you need to. But then, still not quite done with this scalpel. I love a scalpel too, by the way. When I was doing that flat cutting around the edge there, I actually was bending the blade.
Yeah, that's why I said similar to a fillet knife.
Yeah, that blade actually bends a little bit, and it lets you go in at an even flatter angle. So, all right, what am I doing now? I'm taking down here near the base of the feather, near the roots where it came out of the bird. I'm taking and filleting. I don't know. I'm serrating it really, really fine. I'm putting those fine fibers. If you ever look at a feather that's been plucked down near the bottom, there's some wild fibers that kind of come flying off of there.
Little downy.
Yeah, downy type stuff. So I'm trying to simulate that. So I'm gonna serrate that a little bit so I can get some of that kind of stuff going on. And
do you remember a guy named Jack Cox that might have been in Jackson, Mississippi?
yeah, you asked that already.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
That was before we were live, though.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We had somebody,
yes, I do.
We had somebody calling him out and say he was very helpful at the store.
He was just one of the nicest guys in general that I probably ever met. He ran a great store there in Jackson. Was there forever. Great guy. I don't know what became of him or where he is these days, but you know, that's one of the great things about the leather business and the years that I spent in it was the people, and not just the people I worked with, but the customers. I mean, leatherworkers are some of the neatest people in the world. They really are. They're salt of the earth folks, and that's true no matter what part of the world you run into them. All right, I want you to focus back here for a second.
Let me try to zoom this in just a little bit more. Trying to find a happy spot. Somebody wanted it zoomed in a little bit more, but the focus...
Then I moved it?
Well, the focus kind of gets crazy, and if I go to manual focus, and then when you try to hold something up, then it's not in focus, so... All right. You're good now.
I'm good now? Okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to serrate these edges a little bit. You know, on a good day, and when he has nothing better to do, a bird will sit there and preen himself. He'll take his beak and run it through his feathers, and you know what he's doing? He's kind of like mending it back together, putting all these places where it kind of separated like this, putting them back together. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a feather up close, but it's like God created Velcro before we ever did. That's like a hook and tooth thing, and if you run your hand back over it, it'll bind back together like that. It's kind of neat stuff. Anyway, feathers are, I should say. So I'm going to serrate this in a few places like that, just so that it looks like, you know, it wasn't freshly plucked. And I'm done tooling this thing. So what do we do next?
Answer more questions and get you off track.
Yeah, I know. Ask more questions. Well, while I'm doing that, let me borrow that bottle of what is it? RTC. What I'm going to use next year in that too. What I'm going to do next year is I'm going to put some a leather finish on here, an acrylic finish, because I'm actually going to paint this. And having an acrylic finish on it, and I'm going to finish the fire out of it. I mean, I'm going to actually saturate it so that this actually gets all the way through it. So, and what will happen then is I'm going to let it dry out. And when it dries out, it'll stiffen up, and that's what I want. In fact, I did that earlier, so we'll see how the one I did earlier, how it stiffened up, so I can show you where we're headed. But at this stage right here, as this starts to dry just a little bit, here's where we want to go ahead and bring it to shape. So they need to have probably a little bit of a bend to it like that. And then these things, yeah, they need to be kind of flying everywhere, so let that kind of fly like that. And then these things along the edge, they don't just lay out there nice and flat. They tend to have some curl and some shape to them.
That's one that needs to be preened a little bit.
This one here definitely needs preened. This is the one. This is one you found on the ground that got loose. So we need to get some contour to it like this, and you can keep that bow in it.
So while you're twisting feathers there, we can see on the beveling that burnish that you get on your quill that goes up there.
Yeah.
We had a question or a comment. A viewer not able to get that same type of deepness or the change in color on the burnish. What would help them?
Well, the first thing to check is your moisture content. When you have a thin piece of leather like this, it doesn't take a lot of moisture for you to have plenty. My goal is to, when I dampen it down initially, is to get it damp about a third of the way through. So, and it took one wipe with that sponge there, and this thing was already there, so it didn't take that much. But then as it starts to dry back, there's a happy place where it starts to almost come back to its original color. And if you're doing your stamping and such at that stage, that's normally where you'll get the best. But the other thing that has a lot to do with that is just the grade of leather you're using. I'm pretty sure, I don't even know, but just based on how well this piece of leather worked, I'll bet this was some Herman oak. Because it has nice burnish in it. And one of the things that Herman oak does in their final tanning process is they will hand rub some fat liquors and oils into the leather, and that's what gives you that color. That, as your fibers of your leather are compressed, that color is brought to the surface. That doesn't happen unless you have good moisture content in it, or the right moisture. So that's why moisture content is important, but having a good piece of leather is important as well. So one of the things I found when you pick up a piece of leather and it's really whitish, it may look pretty as all get out, but it's really white looking. Those are usually sold a little bit less expensive, and the reason they are is because they probably cut a corner somewhere, and that hand rubbing of the fat liquors and oils is the most expensive part of tanning a hide. And so if you leave that out, it's still tanned, it's still not going to rot and fall apart, but it isn't going to give you all the carving qualities you might want. So
we sell some imported vegetable tan leather that I've tooled before, and I can never get it to burnish, and it won't take the same type of a color that the Herman oak does, or I don't know. Wickett and Craig, I guess, is the only tanner left in the United States.
Them and Herman oak, yeah. You can get some decent leather out of the country too. I'm not. This wasn't a anti-American, that wasn't the comment I was making. There is some good stuff. You want to get into it. One of the things that Herman oak does, they still do pit tanning, where they actually hang the hides in the tanning solution and let them hang like that. It's one of the ways that they can speed up the tanning process. You have to let just then the agent work through the leather. One of the things they do to speed that up in some tanneries is they do drum tanning. They'll put all that stuff in a drum, and so they'll have it being agitated like this, and that does speed that up. It causes that to penetrate a little bit, but it also breaks down the fibers of the leather a little bit. You end up with a little softer, a little spongier piece of leather. So then they hit it with the Sheridan press, and they have to press it a little harder, and there's a lot to that. So this one here is the one I did earlier, and it's drier, but it's still not as dry as I want it to be ready to color. So I'm going to put both of these over there, and I'm going to show you another kind of feather while I'm doing that.
Well, I'll go through a couple questions. Joshua's had it before, and we talked about it, but it was going to have to be something that I think both of us kind of answered. And can we team up and make some of the styles, Arizona, Texas, classic, and make them into carve rights? You and your wife had dinner with Chad and his wife, and Rusty and Lindsay, Kevin's daughter. And I think some of that conversation kind of took place.
Yeah, it's been going on since we started visiting, and we're gonna find a way to, because I do have patterns, all that. And if you don't want to wait for that, there is a pattern pack that I did that is available at Springfield Leather.
Yeah.
It's on all the different regional styles of leatherwork. Well, they have a whole bunch of them. But anyway, that pattern pack has Montana, Sheridan, not Montana, I'm sorry. I'm from Montana, in case you didn't know that. It has some Texas style. It has Arizona style, sometimes called Porter style. It has California style, which sometimes is called Visalia. They have a Northwest style, popularized by Ray Holes. What else? I don't remember. But all the different regional styles, and there's a couple of patterns from each of those styles in there. So if you don't want to wait for, what do you call them, carve rights?
Carve rights, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't want to wait for that, get that pattern pack and get started. So
another question that kind of branches off of that. You mentioned Texas style, but there's nothing that really goes east of the Mississippi.
yeah, why is that?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
There is a little bit.
Yeah.
There is a little bit. There's some, what we know about leatherworking came to us from Europe for the most part. In fact, from Spain a lot. The Spaniards, used to basically own California and that part of our country. And when they came to this country, they brought their horse culture with them. And along with that, of course, you had to have the saddlers and the people that maintained the gear for those animals. And so that's why a lot of what we see has the Western influence. That's why there is a California style, and it's because those folks developed that style out there. The east of there, though, if you look at, and I think I have, what did I call it? A Victorian style. That's one of the other things I cover in that pattern pack, and which is largely European. They were doing leather work over there and decorating leather with designs and such over there a long time. The Moors did a lot of geometric type stuff, and you see that in some of the work over there. I had the privilege of teaching some classes at a Arts and Crafts Institute in Vigo, Spain. I've been over there a couple times teaching, and it was amazing. That particular institute, they're all about preserving the traditional arts and crafts, the heritage of that region of their country, and the leatherwork they do, it's magnificent. But boy, it's different than what we do. Well, we learned from that. That's the stuff that we inherited, and we modified it certainly. But the decoration and such that we see here largely comes from the saddle shops. Earlier on, the kind of stuff that maybe the settlers in New England and such, they weren't all about making purdies on their leather. They were about making something functional, that would help them survive, and that's why maybe there's not something heard about. There's some great leather workers back there. They're some of the finest construction I've ever seen is some of the stuff that comes out of England. Oh my gosh. I mean, they are magnificent with their construction. But anyway, if somebody's watching from that, educate me. Show me what you can do. Develop a style.
We had a guy said he's going to develop the Georgia style.
There you go.
He did say yesterday
Georgia.
Georgia. But he did say that he was not very good at the decorative cuts.
Shame on you. You got to
practice more.
Work on it. Yeah. I did actually do a class over in Georgia once, and it was I took Cherokee Rose, I think is the state flower, and I did a wallet pattern with that, and I don't know where that's available right now, but I have it anyway. And yes, if you could take something like that, develop your own style with that, it's a really cool flower. I wish I'd have brought that now. But all right, other questions? I'm going to do another feather here, but different. Okay.
We were talking about every place that people were watching from. We mentioned some yesterday. So if you're out there, list it where it's at. Where over the world are you watching from?
I did. Folks often want to learn, how did I get into leatherworking, and where did that fire get started? And as I mentioned, I grew up in Montana. I grew up actually on a ranch that was 50 miles from the nearest town, which was Miles City, and Montana. One of the influences that affected me was at the Miles City Saddlery. It's one of those saddleries that was well known around the West for being one of the great saddle shops out there. In fact, I did some work for the Texas Cattle Raisers Association once, and was in their museum. They were actually looking to create a museum, and they had all these old saddles in there, and they were showing me around and such. And I I said, they were curious. He said, we got all these ones from Montana, First Snow Saddlery and Miles City. We're not real sure why all of those are here, not more Texas stuff. And I said, I know why. I said, the reason that you have all those from that part of the country is because that's where the trail drives ended. When the trail drives went out of Texas, those cattle were driven to Montana. That's actually the end of the trail. In fact, Miles City was the end of the trail quite often. And those cowboys, that's also where payday was. That's where they finally got paid for however long they were on the trail. And Miles City had a lot of things that was well known for. The Miles City Saddler is one of them, but it also had probably more bars on Main Street and more brothels than anywhere in the West. And so those guys probably spent their money in Miles City, and they may have spent most of it on those other extracurricular activities, but they did go home with a good saddle. And that's why a lot of those saddles are down in Texas now, is because that's what they went home with. So related to that, a number of years ago, well, it was in 2016, I know exactly when it was, they had a reunion of the cast and crew that put together, that was in the film series, The Lonesome Dove. Mm-hmm. Robert Duvall was there, and Tommy Lee Jones and Dan Lane, everybody that was in there, they were there. They pulled them together, and the reason they had that get together there was they all of the artifacts, all of the props and the costumes and everything that was used in the filming of that is in storage down at Texas State University, and so they wanted to make sure that was preserved, that it didn't get neglected, and maybe if they had a chance to raise enough funds, maybe be able to acquire some more Texas important things like that. So anyway, they were there, and I was at that time doing all the marketing for Tandy Leather, and so they hit up Tandy to support that, which they did. I arranged that, but then they found out that I was from Miles City. They thought, well, now that's interesting. I mean, that's where, if you watch that video, that's where old Gus, died. Robert Duvall, he was in Miles City when he died, it's at the end of the trail. And they found out that, well, you live here in Texas now, but you learned how to do leatherwork in Miles City. I mean, you got to do something for us, So we did, and I did basically a poster-sized piece of leather carving for them. It was something that incorporated their logo in the center of it, their logo for their event, and it also had around the corners of it some Texas-themed, it was Texas-style leather carving, and that was... and then there was a big open area. I had the logo in the middle, the corner patterns here with the floral, and there was a dove down in the corner, of course. And but around the center of that, then, where that blank space was, they had the cast and crew autograph that. So it had all these different folks autographed on it, and that went to auction. And oh my gosh, that was one of the most thrilling things I've ever been a part of. They actually, they started the auction, when they brought it up on stage, they started this thing out like at $5,000. And I'm saying, holy smokes, for a piece of leather carving. And it took off. I mean, they were actually raising it $1,000 a whack, boom, boom, boom. Man, and my heart's going boom, 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 boom. That's amazing. This is going to be really something. And it got up to, I don't remember, around $15,000, and it kind of stalled out. And Diane Lane, who, if you ever watch that movie, she was the little hooker gal, on there. And anyway, I should have my cardboard under there. I'm making another feather, but this is different, so just watch. Using the same tools, so far. Anyway, she picks up this piece of leather, and she walks around doing the Vanna White kind of thing, and showing it off in front of the folks that were the active bidders on it. And yeah, the bidding took off again, and it kept going and going and going, and that thing finally sold for $28,000.
Wow!
It was a blast to be a part of that, to do something. if you want and I have a lot of other stories like that of things that, some of my most important leatherwork I've ever done got given away. It got donated for something. I mean, anybody that's ever been a Tandy customer and received Tandy catalogs over the last 15 years, a lot of those catalog covers are ones that I did. And those are pretty neat. It's an honor to have your stuff published and go around the world like that. I guess that's why a lot of people know me, is because I've had stuff shared around like that. But
So here we go. Oklahoma, Illinois, Arkansas, Kansas, Germany, 30 miles east of Springfield Leather.
no, Germany's farther away than that.
Let's see. Lots of people that have taken classes from you.
Really?
Nebraska, West Virginia, New Hampshire, Wisconsin. Let's see, where else? Georgia, Washington, Texas, another Texas, Tennessee, Louisiana, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
British Columbia.
Cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, going back to Montana, where I got started, Ken Griffin was one of the saddle makers that was at the Miles City Saddlery. And in fact, his kids graduated from the same high school I did. And Ken Griffin wrote some of the earliest books on leather carving. He had Ken Griffin's scrapbook. It's real basic stuff, but that taught generations how to do leatherwork, and that he was there, and so it was his style of leatherwork that influenced me. When I got into junior high age, back in those days, they still had industrial arts programs, and one of the things you could do in an industrial arts class is you could try your hand at a lot of different things, including leatherwork. And that's the first time I actually got some instruction on it, and it worked out pretty good. I found out that I really liked it. In fact, I was good at it, and people started asking me to make them things, and one thing led to another, and I ended up doing a lot more leather work. And then in high school, I was probably more concerned about goofing off than I was really about furthering my education. And so, but one of the things you could do in high school is you could take industrial arts and you could just focus in on one thing. And so I figured, hey, I'll just go take that and I do leather work, and I can get an A for that without even having to work hard, So that's what I did. And so I worked, and that's where I ran into somebody that really had some knowledge about leather work. And so Mr. Moss, he got killed in a car wreck when I was a senior in high school, and they brought in his replacement, and he didn't know squat about it. So they would send all of their students that were trying to figure out how to lace or whatever. He'd send them over to me and have me show how to do it. So I was teaching people how to do leatherwork while I was still in high school.
While you were a student.
Well, I was still a student. When I got out of high school, I was working construction in Montana. Now, in Montana, construction business, it's good paying money, but it's pretty seasonal.
Very seasonal.
It does snow up there sometimes, and it gets cold. Anyway, so it's seasonal work. So I went in one year, we were laid off for the winter, and went into one of the saddle shops in town there, and it was called Boyd's Boot and Saddle. They were actually a Tandy distributor, but they sold boots, saddles, tack, all that kind of stuff. I asked them, I said, do you ever have anybody, asking for custom work? And they said, well, yeah, we do, but we don't really have somebody that does that, so I don't know, we probably can't help you. And I said, well, I actually do that. And they looked at me, and I was pretty young still at that age. That's a long time ago. But they said, well, if you want, we'll give you a chance. We had a guy in just today that wanted a wallet, and here's one of these Tandy kids. If you want to make that up, we'll see how you do. And so I took that home and knocked it out for them and took it back to them actually the same day. And they looked at me and said, what, did you have this already made or what? And I said, no, I just went home and did that. And they looked at it, and it was a lot better than they were expecting. And so anyway, for the next 4 years, I got to do all the custom work, all the small goods, wallets, belts, handbags, small things like that. I did all that stuff for that saddle shop, and it was great stuff. I loved it, and I hated it both. And the hate part came from the fact that sometimes people would come in and they'd want a belt or a wallet or whatever, and agree to make it for them. And so the next question is, what do you want on it? And they would say, well, show me something. What have you done? And then inevitably they would pick something that I had just finished, for somebody else, and that's what they want. And I hated that. I didn't want to do the same thing again. I want to do something different every time. And that was the part that I hated, but it's also, in hindsight, probably was really good. I tell people in my classes all the time that, how you get better at this stuff? You got to practice. You got to do leatherwork. That's the only way you're ever going to get better at this, is you got to do it. You can watch me do this all day long, but you ain't going to learn it until you actually pick up the tools and put to use the stuff that I'm sharing with you. That my knowledge doesn't become your knowledge until you use it. And that, in hindsight, I actually, that was good for me, because I did have to do the same design over again. And you know what? You can't do the same one twice without doing it better than you did last time. I guarantee it.
Or different.
You learn something with every piece of leatherwork you do. But a lot of people don't turn around then and put that to use. And so, if you don't do it again, it kind of slips away from you. So, I that in hindsight was really good for me, and so I was doing, and I also had, at the same time, there was a saddle maker in town that did a great job with saddles, but he hated carved leather, and so he had me doing all of his full carvings, and man, was I making the money. Woo! I could do a full carved saddle. It'd only take me about a week, because I'd have to do it in the evenings and such, because I was, during the summer anyway, I was working construction, so I'd carve leather at night and do this. But I'd make $100 for a full carved saddle. I mean, holy smokes! That's a lot of money. I was doing that. In fact, I was doing that one time. We were working on a job up in Billings, Montana, and going to the hotel room. I've been in hotel rooms, had people banging on the wall because they heard this tapping going on. I remember one time we had a lady come up, the housekeeper or whatever, come up and knock on the door and said, "You can't hang pictures in here." I said, I'm not, and I had to show them what I'm doing. And so, but anyway, I was doing that, and in Billings, and I picked up the newspaper, and I saw that Tandy Leather was looking for people with, career aspirations, or I don't even remember what it said, but I said, that'd be the perfect job. I mean, I could do what I love to do, and if I could just make a living at it, that'd be great. So, so I went. We were, at that time, we were working on a job. We were building a bridge with creosote piling, and I don't know if you all know about creosote, but it's nasty stuff, greasy. I was wearing coveralls, and for me to get from the job to Tandy before they closed, well, I had to go straight to the job. I didn't get to go clean up. So I go walking in there, and back then my hair was a bit longer, probably in this area
shoulder length?
Probably shoulder length, and my beard was probably mid-chest. And I walked in there straight from the job, so I'm in coveralls, wearing a hard hat, and pretty well greased up. Okay, so here I come walking in the door, and I said, "Hey, I hear you're looking for some help." And oh my gosh, the looks I got. And the guy, he gave me this kind of a sideways look, saying, "Yeah, right, just came off the street or something," And anyway, but he gave me an application, and he said, "Fill this out and bring it back." And so I did, and I had a chance to clean up and I took it in on Saturday. And what I'm doing now, I put the hair texture on here, okay, and now I'm going to bevel all the way around it. This is different than last time, so stay tuned.
That's not your line beveler that you use.
No, I'm using a regular checkered beveler. Nothing's fancy about that. If you're a tool guy, it's a B702. There you go. One of those high-tech tools. Anyway, so I went back in there on a Saturday and took my application in. I'd cleaned up a little bit. I took a little bit of leather work with me and showed them that, yeah, I really actually do some leather work. And they looked at it, and they found out because, see, I told you I was doing some stuff for this place that was a Tandy distributor at the time down in in Miles City, and they had talked me into teaching some classes for them. The folks at Tandy said, you'll have more business if you'll just, if you'll teach classes and show people how to do this stuff, Makes sense. So they talked me into doing that. So I was actually teaching classes. I was doing better leather work than they probably had seen. And I'm interested in a career. And they said, when can you start? That's perfect. You're the guy we've been looking for. And so my next question is, what does it pay? That's a part of the conversation. And the guy said, well, it's minimum wage, but you get a lot of hours. And I said, what's minimum wage? Because I was working a union scale job. I think then it was around $15 an hour I was making, and this would have been in 1978. That's a lot of money. But you only make that when you're working. You don't make that when you're shut down in the wintertime.
You don't make that in January.
Yeah. So anyway, I said, so he said, and I think at the time it was like $285, $295. I don't know what it was. It's around less than $3. $265 an hour. Okay. My wife is here. She's reminding me, because she was part of that conversation. Because I had to go home after he said that, and I did, that kind of a reaction. I said, "Holy smokes! I don't know if I can do that." And but anyway, I went home and I told my sweet wife, "Hey, you ain't gonna believe the opportunity." And but anyway, long story short, the decision was made that let's go ahead and do it. In fact, if we don't do it while we're at this age, you probably never will. Most people don't do stupid stuff like that after they're older and wiser. They only do that when they're young, And so, anyway, so I gave my notice where I was working, quit a job at $15 an hour on a Friday, went to work for, what was it, $265 an hour on Monday, and thus I was in the leather business. And but it was been good for me. Obviously, look at what I get to do now.
You probably got a raise at some point, didn't you?
Well, I did. I actually got to go manage several different stores, and I had a lot of success because people would come in and ask a question, or they really had an honest desire to learn about leatherworking. You know what? I could help them. I just show them what I do. just like I'm doing here. Here's how you make feathers. And so people, I had no problem selling stuff. But I don't just use something just to sell it. I mean, I show people, here's what I use. Here's how I do what you're asking about, And so people respected the straightforward honesty, of that. And anyway, I had a lot of success running a store. In fact, to the point where they made me then a regional manager, and I got to oversee 29 stores scattered around 9 states, I think it was, in the Rocky Mountain region. So I spent a lot of time on the road, and the job of regional manager overseeing these stores was still teaching. I mean, I was just showing them, here's what you got to do to be successful, and it wasn't uncommon that when I'd go into one of those stores, I'd be doing a class. After we got done talking whatever about the business, I'd get to work with the customers. And anyway, to make a long story longer, as somebody once said, that's kind of what led me eventually to Texas, because that's where Tandy's corporate office is, and I can tell you all kinds of stories, lots more, but that's not why people tuned in. They tuned in to learn some leather work, right? So look at there. There's a feather.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but it
needs something.
It needs something else, yeah. So let's see, what else can we do?
Well, while you're tooling along here, there's other people that are at home that are tooling, just so they could say they know that you're tooling live right now.
Yeah.
So they're tooling, saying, "Man, I'm just tooling right here with Jim in my house."
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. When COVID hit back in 2000. 2020. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
2000.
Yeah, well, those years run together.
All right, I think we just all try to.
It's the COVID effect,
What kind of? Sorry, before you get to it, what's the blade you're using? Your scalpel.
It's a
and
scalpel.
then the handle on it.
It has a handle on it. Yeah.
A scalpel with a handle, guys.
Yeah, it's a modified one. Somebody took the one that you can go buy at wherever you buy scalpel handles, and then they put some wood on it and then reground it so that it's got a little prettier look to it. Works pretty good.
Is it a clay?
No, it's not.
No?
I think Ed LeBear made that one. Is who made that one. Anyway, yeah, scalpel, and boy, for this right here, scalpel is the best because I really got to bend that blade. And if I break one, I'll show you how you replace those blades. And I've been known to break them before, but I'm going in at a very flat angle here underneath the edge of that. And let's see, where's my modeling spoon?
It sounds like he's been on a video once or twice with us. When stuff goes wrong, it usually goes wrong live.
Yeah, not a problem. I know how to ad lib. What professionals do when something goes wrong, you just go right ahead and say, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do there. I wanted to show you how you fix things like that, and you never admit you messed up.
You were talking about you were a regional manager over 9 states.
Yeah.
Was Colorado one of them?
Colorado, I was based out of Denver, Colorado, and yeah, I was overseeing all of those stores. And
my first leather experience was with Tandy store in Denver, over on Sheridan Avenue.
On Sheridan
Do
Avenue.
you remember that store by chance?
In Lakewood.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's where my office was.
Who
was the manager there? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I was in
this would have been in
junior high school.
84. Well, you're not that. I'm not that much older than you.
It's been 85.
That would have been 85 we were there?
We moved in 85.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was much before that.
Okay.
This was back in the 60s.
Okay, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was still in junior high then, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where my office was, and worked out pretty good.
Yeah. I was telling Liz a week ago in one of these videos, they were talking about my head knife and my round knife, and I told her I was at that store when I was in junior high, and they were teaching a class. It was in the evening time, and there was a guy that was teaching the class, and he had a head knife in a scabbard on his belt. And I thought, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Was that John Puddle?
I don't know who it was. I don't know who it was, but it impressed me.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know if he knew how to use it or not, but by golly, he had it on there and it looked good.
Well, yeah. Got to look cool if you're going to do
Yeah.
this. I mean, I'm just wrecking the heck out of this, aren't I?
Yeah, it looks pretty wrecked.
Yeah.
We had somebody that had a picture of your lonesome dove.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
okay.
They posted it on Instagram.
Okay, so
They shared it. I shared it in all the.
Okay. I actually have some more of those posters. I did get a photo of it, a good photo of it, before I gave it to them to get them all autographed. So I actually have some posters of that if somebody wants that. It's great decoration for a leather shop, I'll tell you what. So just have to reach out and fix you up.
Before we got started here, you guys were sharing some names kind of back and forth of people that you knew, and Denny who you kind of have learned from, and it was just fun to get to listen to you guys
Yeah.
reminisce on.
Well, those are some of the, one of the other things, obviously, when I went to work for Tandy, I got exposed to a lot of great leather workers. And in fact, it was after that I've got to finally get to see some of Al Stolman's work up close and personal. Actually pick it up and examine it and see, is it really as good as it looks in the books? And it was deflating because it's actually better. That's the thing. And a lot of folks will, when they look at the work you do, Danny, or Don King, or whoever it is that's their mentor that they think is the guy that knows the most about it, a lot of times folks will look at that and say, God, I can never do that. But that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
When people look at that, they need to learn from that. They need to redouble their efforts, and that's what happened with me when I learned that Stolman really was that good. I realized that I'm obviously need to apply myself a lot better to this. So, see what I'm doing here? I just ripped this up. I mean, I rolled that up with my scalpel. I didn't cut all the way through. Well, yeah, I did, but pretend I didn't, though. Okay, no, it doesn't matter on this because the idea you're going to be looking at it from this side, and I cut underneath. I didn't cut all the way. I'm not going to cut this all the way loose, but I am going to now run a background tool underneath here to just kind of camouflage. In fact, I might be able to do that with something bigger, faster, better.
Like a matting tool?
Yeah, I just got to remember where I stuck it here. This one here works pretty good. Yeah, matting tool. But the idea here is to put a texture down here, okay? So that it camouflages a little bit that the seam where I cut it loose. And you'll see, I'm not doing this. In fact, I'll bet somewhere's here at a place like Springfield Leather they sell a gel antique, don't they?
Yes.
Made by Phoebing's.
Yes.
Is there one sitting here in the supply area?
But I know where some is.
Okay.
I'll go get some.
Well, I'll show you how I finish that up when we get to the coloring stage.
All right, don't use any cameras that I'm not showing.
All right, I'll just stay right here, nose down, working at it.
If we need another one, I'll go work it.
Anyway, that's kind of how I got to work for Tandy, and again, I got exposed to a lot of great leather workers from that, and got to spend a lot of my time teaching. Some of the things that I've gotten to do, one of the projects I was real proud of, I worked a lot with the 4-H. 4-H is a great program for kids, and they do a lot for building future leaders and such. And I got to know, I went to some of their conventions. Well, that's why I was in Alaska that time. I also got to be at the starting line of the Iditarod that year.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, because of my involvement with 4-H, I went to their national conventions, and there I met the guy that was from Puerto Rico. That was the, I guess the main honcho, whatever you call that, state director or whatever. And he said, "Yeah, this is kind of interesting stuff. It's too bad we don't have that as part of our program down there." And I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Well, we don't have the stuff, and nobody really knows." And I said, "Well, what if I could help with that?" And one thing led to another, and I got to go spend, I guess that was about 10 days down there, teaching a bunch of leaders. What'd you do?
Well, I didn't know what color. So I brought these colors.
Okay, I'll bet one of them will work.
Okay, you have every color you could want.
Okay, so no excuses. Huh? So anyway, I got to go down to Puerto Rico. I taught, I think over the course of those 10 days, I taught about 80 4-H leaders how to teach leatherwork to kids, and got that now as part of the official program in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And they now have leatherwork there. Leatherwork still goes on, and real just proud to have been able to have a part in that.
I would think.
I joke. I talk to my sister all the time. If you could see the house I grew up in, oh my gosh, it's
smaller.
it's about the size of this. The entire house is about the size of it. It had 2 bedrooms and then a main room that had the kitchen and a table, and that was about it. And it was, like I said, 50 miles from the nearest town, so we were not real flush growing up. And in fact, the plumbing facilities was in another building out back, and there was no running water. In fact, we got our water out of a well. We had to go out and pump water out of a well, our drinking water, and we put it in a galvanized bucket and have it there on the counter with a dipper off the side. And anyway, enough about that. But I joked with my sister. I said, "Can you imagine me as a kid telling my folks that, yeah, when I grow up, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become like this world-famous leatherworker, and I'm going to travel around the world, and I'm going to teach people how to do leatherwork, and they're going to actually pay me to come to learn from me." Can you imagine how stupid that would have sounded? In fact, it sounds stupid today, too, doesn't it? Because how many opportunities are there to do that?
Yeah.
But I've been incredibly blessed to do exactly that.
Well, you work for it.
Well,
You can see that.
and if people don't know this or haven't figured this out, I actually enjoy what I'm doing. This isn't work. This is fun, and this is what I've got to do my entire life. And so, if it looks easy when I do it, yeah, it should.
So Jim did bring all of his own tools. Matt's toaster is the screen name. Matt's toaster said,
Oh,
"You're using a rawhide mallet. Is that all we had to give you?"
well,
But you brought your own tools.
I brought my own tools, and yes, I use a rawhide mallet. And the reason I use a rawhide mallet is because I'm old and I don't learn new things. This is what I've used for like forever. The one that came with my beginner's kit back then, I couldn't afford a rawhide mallet. So I got one of their cheap wooden one, and it got turned into sawdust eventually. It just got totally chewed up, and when I got one, I went ahead and splurged and got me a rawhide one like all the big boys were using, and that's what I've used ever since. And I've wore out several of these. They have this one here's doing pretty good still. You can see the wear on it, but I've got some at home that I've sliced off, slivers off the end of it to get a new face on it. Just take a hacksaw to it and hack it off. I've got some. They get lighter every time you do it, but they still work. So, but yeah, that's what I use is a rawhide mallet. I like the balance. I like the way it hits, and I shared this in some of the other classes. I actually prefer rawhide over the polyhead mallets because when I hit this, it stays hit. It doesn't recoil. It doesn't chatter. And I found that the polyhead stuff does chatter sometimes. And for somebody that's not got a good grip on what they're doing, it can mess you up. So, all right. Well, this is actually close to done too. So, how's our other ones doing there? Are they getting stiffened up? That's pretty cool. Look at that.
We've had quite a few people enjoy watching you, relaxing to watch you. Robert says, enjoy your work. I watched your training videos, and then he's from Florence, Alabama, and got to know Jim Marcel. He taught him everything that he knew.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Jim Marcel makes a lot. I don't know if he's still doing it or not. I hope so. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but Jim used to make a lot of fireman stuff, like even helmets, but also the badges and stuff. Yeah, he used to do like a ton of that. I mean, a ton of
Denny,
that.
do you know if we carry that background tool? I have it here. It's a Craft Japan E294. We have one that's similar.
There's others that make it besides Craft Japan. That one's, I've had that in a long time. I think they're the ones that maybe first come out with that design. I've seen it copied by many other tool makers, believe it or not. But it's a pretty cool tool, and it does a great job. I've got a ton of different background type textures that I use, but when I go out and do one of these, I've got a lot of one of a kind stuff. Can you imagine working at Tandy? I had a chance to get a hold of some prototype stuff. In fact, all right, truth in advertising here. That old faithful swivel knife blade, back around, when they were first introduced to the leather industry back in it was when I was a regional manager, so it would have been in the mid-'80s, late 80s probably. I was in Fort Worth at one of our regional manager meetings, and George Hurst, who was the merchandise manager at the time, he had all these different ceramic blades laying on his desk. He said, "Hey, boys, this is what's coming. This is the new thing. We're going to start carrying these." And he had everything there. He had a 1/2 inch, and he had angle blades and filigree blades and the 1/4 inch blades and the traditional 3/8 and all these different kinds of blades there, all out of ceramic. And he said, "Which ones do you think we ought to put in the line?" Of course, my vote was like, hey, the only one somebody needs to have is a 1/4 inch straight blade. That's all anybody really needs. But I got outvoted because they ended up with, the line that they ended up with. And so anyway, I said, after they got done, I said, then you don't need this one then, do you? And I picked that up, and believe it or not.
That's the original?
That's the original prototype of that blade. Yeah. It's old.
So you've never dropped it then?
I have. I didn't drop it, but it did fall off I hit the edge of my bench with it once or something, and I took a chip out of one corner, And I was heartbroken. I went to the others, but it's still the blade I like to use. And so anyway, I one time was at one of these leather shows, and a friend of mine, Jeff Mosby, I don't know if you know him, but he makes some maker stamps and stuff, and we were talking, and I told him, I said, here's what I'm using, but it's not my favorite. The old favorites at home is ceramic, and I chipped the corner on it, and so it's just, I guess, retired. And he said, well, send it to me. I can fix that. Jeff he does inlay work into guitars and necks and stuff like that. He did one for Santana. I mean, that's
Carlos,
his, yeah. He's high end with that kind of work, and he's got the equipment to do that. So I sent it to him, and he polished it up, and it came back. He refaced it and everything. It came back probably working better than it was before I dropped it, and so I've been more careful with it since then. But yeah, I use that. I get asked all the time, about that one, and I use it because it is my favorite. But it's real important that people don't think that, hey, I got to go get one of those blades from somewheres so I can do leather work like Jim. That's just BS, and don't be thinking like that, because it has nothing to do with that. I was mentioning in one of the classes, somebody said that they need to work on their swivel knife cuts. Well, when I do swivel knife cuts, in fact, I guess I ought to autograph these, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll have to do that. Look at that. That's pretty cool, huh?
That's nice. Very nice.
But I'm not done with that. How much time do we have? Do I get to just go on until I get tired, or what?
Yeah, we're 12:20. I mean,
okay.
There's still 150 people or so.
I have no problem going on and on and on. Let me get the signature in here.
Molly wants to know if you're coming to Waco.
Yeah,
Who?
Molly. Somebody wants to know if you're going to Waco.
Of course I'll be in Waco. If you're going to be in one of my classes, though, you better hurry up, because they're kind of... So I had to have them expand the one I do on swivel knife finesse down there. They initially had it set up for 25, and it sold out before the end of last month. But they found me a bigger room so I can get more in there, and I'll have AV type help to make sure that everybody can see what I'm doing. So yeah.
Now you just used a stylus to write your name.
Yeah, and I did this one really large.
but now you're going to go over it with your swivel knife.
Now I'm going to cut it. Yeah, I have to have a tracing pattern. I might misspell it.
I thought you were magic.
I am magic, but
yeah, he's cheating it. He's making it really big this time.
Yeah, I know.
Usually we try to see how small we can make it.
Yeah, some of these other pieces have some pretty small ones on them.
Guys, I don't know if
yeah, I think we said something.
you can see this.
Yeah, let's see.
You will never see his name, but it is there.
And it was done with the swivel knife. Now, on that one, I did use a different knife. I did have one with a smaller blade, and I had to put on some goggles, some extra seeing devices.
Binoculars.
Well, you just have to be able to see.
Like a jeweler's loop or something.
Well, it's just one of those Optivisor things, yeah. But it was good enough. But a lot of folks think that you got to have a special blade to do fine work and such like that, or to do intricate carvings and things like that. But it's just not true. It takes more than anything. It takes practice. More than anything.
Dean said you only have about 3 hours left. Rolf says, is there any chances to see you in Germany or Europe? I know you'll be across the pond.
Yeah, I am headed to, I'm going to be in Norway in October, late October. I'm teaching a class at Skinlaven up in Hønefoss. And so that's a lot closer than Springfield, Missouri, I know.
Yeah.
All right, but it's just a bunch of blank leather here. You can't just leave it like that.
You better doodle.
I might need to add something here to it. Let's see what else we can come up with here.
Do you strop that ceramic blade?
Yeah, you got to strop any swivel knife blade. Now, there's two reasons. Well, with steel blades, the main reason is it maintains the polish on it, which that's really important. But I also polish my, well, I don't really polish it. I strop my ceramic blade because it needs cleaning. The very things that I was telling you about, that fat liquors and oils and stuff that they handle, that stuff will build up on your knife. And so if you don't strop it once in a while, you clean it, it will start to drag a little bit. You know.
So when you strop that ceramic, it actually doesn't change the edge.
No, and it shouldn't change the edge when you strop a steel blade either. When you're stropping, you need to hold it like flat like this, so that you're not lifting it above that. I'm maintaining that angle, so you should never change the edge when you're stropping. I had was teaching class, in fact, over in Norway. One of the first times I was over there, and I had people come from all over the place. Had somebody from Germany, in fact, that was there, and this guy had some really nice tools. He'd been doing leatherwork a long time. He had a Robert Beard swivel knife that was, which are not cheap, and he obviously had used it a lot too. But I don't even remember what the class was I was teaching, but everybody got started, and I was going around to see how everybody was doing, and he I looked at his work, and it looked like all he'd done is just went over the lines real heavy, like with a stylus or something. And I said, can I see your knife? What's going on there? Well, I looked at his knife, and it was just rounded off on the end. It was, it looked like the end of my stylus, and I said, well, do you strop that? And he said, oh, yeah, I do all the time. And he pulls out his strop, and he shows me how he strops it, like that. And he was been doing that. Now, you don't wreck a knife the first time you do something wrong. But he'd been doing this for years, and he'd never had a point of comparison. So I handed him my knife. I said, here, try this one. And he starts cutting with it. He goes, oh. One of these kind of, oh my God, kind of reactions to it. And I was, so I took his knife and fixed it. But, you have to strop every knife, and you have to maintain that polish on it. If somebody, and I'll see this sometimes when I'm teaching classes, they'll be cutting away here, and somebody will be going like this here with their hand, And I asked, what's going on? They said, well, it's cramping up right here in the palm. I said, well, get rid of the death grip on your knife. I mean, when you're holding a swivel knife, it's a fingertip controlled tool, okay? So when you're running this tool, all the pushing down is done with this finger. All the rest of these are just for steering it. And if you're having to grip it with that tight of a grip to steer it, well, strop it up so it'll go through the leather again. I mean, it doesn't take that much effort to be able to control your knife. And if it is, take a look at what you're doing. Anyway. So, yeah, maintaining the knife, not having tools that work the way they should. I polish everything I use, too, by the way. I polish my modeling spoon. I polish my swivel knife, of course. I polish my stylus.
You strop this?
No, I don't.
I do.
You can, but those blades are pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But if you use it correctly, it doesn't really need stropping quite that often. But yeah.
You have a favorite modeling spoon shape?
Yes. The one I'm using. That one right there. That blade shape right there. And I should have brought it. I actually have. I said I have a lot of one-of-a-kind tools. One-of-a-kind tools, one of the one-of-a-kind tools I have was given to me by a guy by the name of Jim Lind. Jim Lind was an Al Stolman Award winner back in about 2003, somewhere. I don't know that exactly, but anyway, great guy. He lived up in Montana, and when I first met him, we became instant friends because we were, of course, Montanans. So. But he said, you do a lot of, let me make you a modeling spoon. he said, it's just, well, I'll show it to you. He said, you'll be back here next year, right? And I said, yeah. So anyway, the next year he gives me this modeling spoon, and I looked at it. I said, man, that is really nice. And he said, yep. Now, he said, let me tell you about that modeling spoon. He said, there's only 3 of those that exist. I said, 3? What? And he said, well, you have one now, and I have one. And he said, the other one is the one I made for Al Stolman. And I'm going, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, sure, you made Al Stolman's modeling spoon. Because, everybody would want to claim that, right? But anyway, I was up there then in that museum. If you've ever been to Sheridan, they have Al Stolman's bench and his workshop and all that is upstairs in that museum. And so I'm up there one time, and I'm looking at his desk. So they've got his tooling desk is there, and it's covered with granite. But down here on the sides are drawers, and that's where all his tools were kept. And of course, they got them under glass so that you can't mess with them. But I pulled out that top drawer and pulled it all the way out, and in the back of that, sure as hell, here's that modeling spoon.
Wow.
And holy smokes, that really is. And so why do I use this one? This is the closest thing that's commercially available to what I have. I actually have a copy of Al Stolman's modeling spoon, and this is the closest thing to it. But I've modified it. Okay, I modify a lot of my tools. This one here, if you were to go buy a modeling spoon from most places, you'd find that they're commercially made and they have an edge on them that's kind of blunt like that, and you'll never see that on the camera probably, but it's fat, it's thick, it's the thickness of the metal there. But the one that I have comes almost, in fact, this one here, I took this on a stone and I honed it down.
Almost to a knife edge.
Almost to a knife edge. And then I polished that edge so that it's still rounded. I can use this tool to actually undercut. It's sharp enough. I can undercut with this tool. But when you go look then at some of the leatherwork that Stolman did, and I do have several pieces of his work in my collection, and you see the detail that he got, I now think that he did a lot of that really, really fine stuff with his modeling spoon, because you can. It'll capture that kind of detail because of that. So yes, this is my favorite one. It's kind of a spade shape on it, and in fact, if any of those whoever was asking about modeling spoon, one of my other classes I'm doing down in Waco is modeling spoon finesse. And I will bring that Stolman one with me and let y'all see that. But I'll do an entire design. In fact, where is it? Here we go. Let me see that. This right here was done completely with a modeling spoon and a swivel knife. This design right here is just 2 tools, a swivel knife and a modeling spoon. What's the most important tool? Well, I still got to have a swivel knife. But that right there is done. And the reason this is here, I do classes all the time on pieces of leather this size right here. A lot of the stuff you're going to see in my pattern packs are on pieces of leather this size here. And I was doing this class one time, teaching people, and there's a little bit of embossing, and of course a lot of specialized figure carving, pictorial carving tools that it was used here. And somebody complained. They said, oh, I can't do that. I ain't got that tool. I said, what? And he said, I can't. So I handed him my tool. I said, here, use my tool, but let me show you something. I said, you don't have to have a lot of tools to do leatherwork. And so while they were catching up with where I was at, I did this. And I used just a modeling spoon and a swivel knife. I didn't draw this. I found this. Somebody else did the original sketch on that. But it was perfect for what I wanted to do. So anyway. And it was done with a modeling spoon like that. So anyway. You ask enough questions, you'll get a lot of different answers here.
Plus, when you do that, and then you say, "Hey, look here, I've got 2 tools. Let's see what I can do."
Yeah, well, and going back to what did I say? The necessity's the mother of invention. If you were sitting somewhere, you had some leather, somebody wanted a design on it, and all you got's a modeling spoon and a swivel knife, get her done. You still can. Mm-hmm. You still can. So.
Oh, okay. Is there a certain brand on that modeling spool?
I think you can.
I think we carry the same one.
I bet you do. They're coming from Ivan, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's who made this one originally. But if it's like what I had when I bought this, they're still too thick. You still got so I took that on a stone and worked it down, and then, but you can see the back of it's all polished up and everything. Mm-hmm. I still did a lot of stropping on it to make sure it's polished up and working smoothly. So anyway, that's how that's done. All right.
Well, there's our three feathers. I think we'll probably end the YouTube and the Facebook thing there, and then you want to do some coloring because we'll have to let it dry just a little bit.
This one we will. The other ones are probably ready.
They're probably ready.
This here's ready to have some color thrown on.
All right, well, throw some color on that one. You need some paper. You got some paper?
I've got a piece of cardboard that works really good, and I got a paper plate, and I got some dye over here. I think.
We'll do some quick coloring on that one.
Quick coloring, yes.
Well, that one dries, and then we'll finish up over on Twitch after that. Everyone says, "Don't end it." Don't end it. At some point, Jim does have to eat.
Oh yeah, but Jim,
or at least Denise does, and she might be pushing him out the door, and I'll just follow him with the camera. We'll just move it to my phone.
All right, this is stiffened up. You can see what happened with the acrylic, right? It's got some form. It wants to hold its shape and everything. So that's pretty good. That's why we use the acrylic. But I'm going to use some acrylic paint now, and I'm going to add some real true-to-life colors with it. And I've got here some Angelus acrylic paint, and that's a pretty good glob there.
I believe that's vanilla is what I gave.
That's vanilla, okay. And then I got some dark brown.
I got you a new dark brown.
Yeah.
So there's going to be paint that actually can
Look at it. Look at it. It runs right on.
It didn't happen the other day.
No.
It came out in clumps.
It didn't want to do that the other day. And then there's some brushes here somewhere.
David says you ate yesterday, didn't you?
I did. I ate last night again, so yeah. I'm good.
Oh, you got 2 meals in.
Yeah, within the last 24 hours. So. All right. This is actually pretty easy to do. We'll see how this works. I like to use an ivory rather than a white. I'm going to do this kind of like an eagle feather. You know, give it that kind of a coloration. And you can see that. And this is. The Angelus paint works pretty good for this because it's thin enough. Some acrylics, if you take some of that stuff that comes straight out of the tube, it's thick enough that you'd fill in all these little grooves that I just made with the hair blade. So, but this
and
Angelus,
you wouldn't see them when it dried.
Yeah, they would kind of you'd lose some of the effect that we just put in here. So, but using this right here, we can. It goes on there thin enough, and of course I'm running my brush with the direction of those lines so that the fibers of the brush actually get that right down in here. And of course when you do these 3D feathers like this, you got to do the back too, because first thing people are going to do is look at the back.
Turn it over.
Oh yeah, they're going to look at the back and see, what is that? No, this can't be leather. The painting goes pretty quick, though. Well, I'm making it go pretty quick because somebody said, "Oh, we got to cut this off."
Oh, blame it on me.
Well, I'm not.
That's okay.
That's all right. You said that was your rule.
It's the Jim Burns. Oh yeah, I'm good at dishing it out, so I better be good at taking it.
All right. I like to use, when you look at a lot of eagle feathers, they look like they're black and white. Well, they're not black and they're not white. I like to use this here. What'd you call this? Vanilla. Okay.
Vanilla.
It's off-white, basically. I like to have maybe a little more yellow tone to it, which if I wasn't being rushed, I could get that. I just blend some. I usually do that. I'll take my colors on. I'm mixing in such here on the fly, but this will work. You'll understand. So when you do this, you got to make sure you get those edges. Like especially down here where you cut. You got to make sure you get paint on those. You don't want, leather color.
Raw edge looking.
Yeah. So. Pretty finessed, isn't it? Look at that. I had, doing these feathers like this, I'll tell you a couple stories on Pete. First one, I did some of these. I had them hanging for a little while. I worked for a company called Hide Crafter Leather and helped them kind of get their feet on the ground. And anyway, I had made some of these and had one hanging up. It was actually had a deerskin hoop stretched, and then I had one of these that was a little more life size hanging in the middle of that. And one day this fella comes in and he says, "Are you Native American?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you can't have that in here." And I said, "What?" He said, "That feather, you can't have that in here." He said, "I'm Native American. I know what they look like." I said, "Well, it's not a real feather." And so I took it down and let him look at it. I said, "It's actually made out of leather." And he says, "No." And so after he looked at it a little bit, he said, "Really?" He said, "Would you sell it?" I said, "What? Yeah, I guess." He said, I said, "What are you going to do with it?" He said, "Well, I have real ones." He said, "But when I put them on my costume, my dance costume, they get beat up pretty good, and they're kind of hard to come by. And so I'm going to use these." And so anyway, so he ended up buying them. So that was a pretty good compliment about how cool these can look. Another story. One of the guys that I learned a lot of the embossing stuff from, and was Rob Barr. And I don't know, he'd have to be an old guy to remember him. He was pretty active, doing a lot of teaching and such, and he really popularized the 3D embossing stuff with the leather putty and all that, and was a good friend of mine. He used to travel about doing classes kind of the way I do, but anyway, he's no longer with us, but he was a jokester. He was Native American. He was a Sioux Indian and lived up in Bismarck, North Dakota. And anyway, but he was a good enough leatherworker. He got to travel the world a bit, showing people what he did and teaching classes and such. And he was on his way to, I believe it was to Tokyo one time, and he had some of his feathers he'd made in there, and it was in his carry-on luggage because you don't want these to get crushed. So. And as he was going through there, they had him open his bag and said, "Yeah, no, you can't. That's illegal. You can't have those." And those are endangered animals. You can't have those. And Rob, being who he is, he rather than explain to him that no, those are made out of leather, he just pulled out his Native American card and said, "No, I can have these. See." and that was good enough. So. But, so
he could legally own leather.
He could legally own leather feathers. But when you do these kind of feathers, a lot of times when I see people do this, they will take their darker color, and there's like almost a dividing line where they'll take it up to one point, and then from that point on, it's the other. But what I'm doing here, and what these are, this is like an adolescent eagle. They when they're born, they're black. They're pretty much really dark all over. They don't have the white feathers until they get a bit older, and so as they do, though, they get white from the roots out. Okay, so this is one that's in that shade, and that's the reason I paint this one like that is because, well, that's what people expect eagle feathers to look like, right? That's kind of the common thing. So that's why I do it like this, but. When you paint these, you can see right now I'm getting the tip out there real good, but then I'm going to wipe off most of it here, and I'm going to get to where I've got very little on my brush, and I'm going to start trying to ruin this brush by just jabbing.
Kind of model that out.
Yeah, it's called stippling is the technical term, but it does a good job of transitioning that from the heavy up there to the real dark down into the white, and then I'll do the same thing going back the other way. You notice I clean off our brushes every time. You sure
douse them in water.
You sure wouldn't want to mix that color together. And then I'm going to redefine that quill just a little bit here. And I'm going to then stipple some of the what do you call it? vanilla. I'm going to stipple some vanilla over the top of my brown. Go back the other way. So that it makes it really hard to see where one color quit and the other one began. And so it's
Just
not
like Bob Ross, you're just making a happy little feather.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Happy little feather.
Yeah, they're not hard to do, really.
That's
When you
beautiful.
watch it happen, you know, none of this was complex. But when you get all done and you tell people, yeah, that's leather, it'll impress them usually. Sometimes they have a couple larger spots on them. Anyway, no other burning questions that need to be asked before you shut things down?
No burning questions that I got.
Okay.
I haven't even asked you any fiery leather questions to get you worked up, but I see that ending the video has done that anyway.
All right. Well, there you go.
That's beautiful.
Go back to that.
Maybe that's a better shot there, like
Let's see,
that.
maybe I can hold it up there. I won't make you hold it.
All right.
And you can still see those, the feather lines, your hairline are still in there.
Yeah, that's
Good.
kind of a rush paint job, but
I know.
it'll do.
I heard somebody was trying to rush it. All right. Well, there we have it. We got some other recorded videos that we've been doing with you for the patterns that we're carrying of yours, and then we'll be back on Friday to do the leather trading cards.
Trading cards, yeah. We'll do some fun stuff with that. Just for those that are wondering, why did I have you go get this gel antique? I use that gel antique with a paintbrush, and I'll paint it under here and then let that fade out, and that's thick enough that it will further camouflage. So it looks like that. Most of the time, people, when they see this all done, want to know if that's another piece of leather stuck on there. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll do that. We'll do that part on Twitch on the after party. We'll hang out with them a little bit longer, and you can do that. But anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm having fun. Yeah, I wish y'all were here. I hope you're doing leather wherever you're at. You know, that's the point. So, share your pictures. I have a Facebook group called Elk Track Studio Creations. Mm-hmm. I would love to see a whole slug of these feathers show up on there that y'all made after watching this, and put them on Springfield.
Friends of Springfield Leather.
Yeah. Show them. Show people what you're doing. Yeah. It's important. You all have a role in keeping this alive and exciting for the rest of the leatherworking world. So make sure you're doing your part as well.
All right. Well, we're going to jump over to Twitch, and thank you so much for joining us, Jim. We'll have to have you back and do an embossing class with us.
Okay.
All right. See you guys.